Well, that's us, gentlemen. Once again, many thanks to Magilla for sharing his expertise with us. Also, his partner in crime, Joris, and assisting us tonight, also Millbilly and the one and only Mark Hodinut. Magilla, I'm just going to leave it over to you, pal, because you've really done some research into this, and I'm very impressed.
Okay, I have a screen shared. If you could bring it up.
Mhm. Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, and let me try to do a little better with that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
is that pretty good?
Excellent.
Yep.
Okay, so last time we got into the introduction to this new phase of work, where I described some of the things I learned by having a discussion with Jeff Young, who's a master trainer of,
That's easy. I can.
and I think some of the questions got a little ahead of where we'd analyze the tracks.
Sure. Okay.
So today we're going to really take a deep dive into Scent Dog tracks 5 and 6. So
Lovely.
I've been sending this picture out as sort of a overview and teaser as to what was going to come in our talk today, and it really provides a quick summary of tracks 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
So track 3 was when Loof started at Teresa's last known location where the RAV4 had parked near the maroon van, and Loof had tracked to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac where police were busy doing something that wasn't pertinent to the case, and they
Mhm.
stopped the scent dog from tracking what might have been key evidence. While the police were doing things that weren't pertinent to the case at the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, we talked about track 4, where Officer Fauski took Loof down toward the deer camp, gave Loof another find command with the scent article, and Loof had circled the deer camp and then continued down the road to the southeast uh, without showing a lot of interest in the deer camp, but did circle it while on
Right.
track.
Right.
Okay, so today we're going to cover tracks 5 and 6. So track 5 was a partial rerun of track 3. This occurred right after apparently Andy Colburn said that the findings at the Cuss Road suspected burial site were not pertinent to the case. They opened up the barrier tape and they allowed the dogs to actually run a track in. And it was also run while there were still a lot of people standing around from the Wisconsin State Crime Lab and from the Wisconsin DCI.
Right.
So that track's of interest to us for a number of reasons, and we're going to go into it in some depth today. It's also important that the lead human remains detection dog, Canine Brutus, did some alerts in this area, and we're going to go over in depth those alerts. Now that track actually closed the work for November 7th, and the work closed right about sundown, close of business right about 5 p.m. And Loof came back and started working again at 9 a.m. the next day. And then track 6 is what appeared overnight. We're going to go through track 6 in detail today. There's some interesting things that happen. We see a recreation of Loof searching around Stephen Avery's trailer. We see Loof showing some interest at looking across the quarry pit while walking to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. Then when we get to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, Loof, instead of following the path for track number 5, finds a fresher path, circles the Cuss Road, the Redont deer camp, and then finds a new strong trail that hadn't been there the day before. Okay?
Right. Yep.
Okay, so hopefully when we're done, we'll have a good understanding of what this means, and I think that'll be enough for today.
Sure.
Okay, so track 5, I've shown track 5 here in the orientation that the writing was on. This is a little confusing because west is to the top.
Okay.
Also, for some reason, the track was on the edge of the map, and instead of giving some clear indication of that, some of Officer Fauski's Sharpie writing on it was just sort of left off. But what happened here is they restarted track 3 about halfway back to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. The reason for doing that was to avoid all the nonsense that had occurred around Stephen's house.
Sure.
So Loof was pre-scented and given a perimeter scent inventory. So that's Fauski, meaning she lets Loof smell the scent article. Then she leads Loof to do a circular inventory of the starting position, and then gives Loof a fine command to walk in the strongest direction of the scent associated with the article. Immediately, Loof starts walking toward the Cuss Road cul-de-sac again. So on track 3, we had some concern that Loof might have changed what she was tracking due to all the times that Officer Fauski had pulled her off a track. Here we have an immediate fine command issued, and Loof shows that track between the homes is associated with the scent article, and that's very important.
I think we're still on just slide 1 there, Magilla.
Slide 1?
Yeah, we're still on slide 1.
Oh, okay. So when I went into presentation mode.
There we go. There we go, yeah. Yep.
All right, I actually talked.
And thanks, Paul, because I too was of the same.
Okay, when I went in presentation mode, it stopped sharing.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah.
All right, so I'll try to do this in edit mode in here in PowerPoint.
Listen, you're doing fantastically. I was just saying that it was that's great.
All right, so we'll just quickly show the track here.
Yeah.
Here we're oriented with north toward the top. Track 3 goes from the location of the RAV4 to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, where they're stopped on the 7th. During the Cuss burial site incident, Loof is not allowed in the vicinity of the burial site. So Officer Fauski goes toward the Redont deer camp, gives Loof a fine command. We talked about this last time. Loof does her loop around the deer camp. And then we were talking about track 5 now, which is the one that starts halfway back to the cul-de-sac. And we'll talk about track 6 in detail too. All right, so this is what I was describing at track 5 when we reoriented the slide with west on top. Can everybody see this?
Yeah. That's great.
Okay, so the one interesting thing that happened was now we have a scent inventory and find command. It halfway back to the cul-de-sac, and Loof is finding human scent associated with the scent object that is bringing her back to the cul-de-sac.
Wow. This is roughly 4 hours after Cuss Road's discovery.
Very good. That's absolutely true, and it's also after they've supposedly given up. So they sent the trucks home, and this was it was run at 3:45. So I believe one of the CASO reports says 4:51 They phone over to one of the lead detectives and tell them that it was nothing.
John Dieterine.
Wow.
Okay. So Loof, we'll go into what Loof does after entering the cul-de-sac, but here the important thing is that she's coming straight off of a fine command from the center. Okay, now when we look in here, Officer Fauski describes it that Loof worked east to the gravel road, then entered the woods again into the marked crime scene area. Canine Loof was looking at the area of a possible grave site, then looking at me, which is common when the smell is not favorable. Canine Loof, with much encouragement, simply walked to the area marked off, although making no indication that it was Teresa Halbach's scent. And then
Hey, Paul. Sorry, Magilla, to interrupt you.
Yes.
I thought I would. You can see I've got my phone here. I've got Stephen Avery on the phone, and I thought because it just happens to be here, you might like to say hello to him.
Absolutely.
So just a moment. Okay, Stephen.
Hello.
Steve, because there's a lot of people online, I'm probably going to have to kind of a little bit translate for you, but is there something you would like to say to all the supporters out there at the moment? Steve, are you there?
Yeah. What did you say now?
I said, is there something you would like to say to all the supporters out there?
Oh, I want to thank all my supporters that you're trying to figure this out and get the real killer locked up and get me free for something I didn't do. And I thank all of my supporters for doing that for me. And keeping my hopes up and writing me and sending me letters and everything else. So I thank you for all of that. I appreciate it. And taking care of my mom and dad when they need something. That's the world.
Better than properly placed. Attorney's calls may be monitored and recorded.
So I thank you for all of that.
Well, Steve,
figure this out and see what happens.
I know I speak for everyone, Steve, to let you know that we're never giving up on this, and we're very confident that the truth will ultimately come out. And just stay strong, and don't worry, we'll take care of things on the outside.
Thanks for all of that.
Hey guys, does anyone have a particular question you'd like to ask Stephen?
Stephen?
Yep. Magilla? Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to know if he's able to see this analysis.
No, unfortunately he can't, Magilla. It's just a phone at the other end. So he can't see this. I've tried to explain it to him, in words, which he understands, of course, at least to some degree. But a picture's worth 1,000 words. But I can tell you that he's extremely grateful for everything that you're doing and everyone else is doing. And I just thought it was opportunity. He happened to call me just as I was on the call with you guys. So obviously I took it, and I thought it was a good opportunity for you to hear from him.
All I can say is there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm sure you could probably hear in the background just chatter. That's the other inmates at Walpon. So, yeah, it's a sober reminder of the value of freedom when we can do what we're doing. But Stephen's in that place, and has been now going on 14 years, let alone the previous 18. So, yeah. So I'm going to just let Stephen say goodbye to you all, and then I'll take the call, and then I'll be back on our chat shortly.
Perfect.
Stephen, you just want to say goodbye to everyone? Thanks, Steve.
Hang in there, Steve.
Stay on the line, Steve. I'm going to be back to you in 1 second.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that, Juice. I didn't mean to do that.
No, it's okay.
I got questions
J-
I'm going to ask Stephen, but
Yeah.
it can't be over a recorded phone line.
No.
No.
I've got the most important question of all, and that is, who does he? What nationality does he think Captain Crunch is? That's what I want to know. But anyway, I jest. But no, sorry, Magilla. That was absolutely brilliant to have Steve on the line, and I think Mark will explain everything to Steve about the sort of research that's going into this case. I mean, people have like yourself, Magilla, Juris, have invested hours and hours and hours into looking at this. I mean, I would just ask this question of the dog handlers. Sorry,
I think Millbilly belongs on that list too.
yeah, that's. Did I not say Millbilly? I thought
Maybe.
I did. Anyway, I was just going to ask. Well, Juris, Millbilly, yourself. I mean, these dog handling tracks. I mean, to me, it seems like. Wow, do Manitowoc County, do they appreciate these dog handlers coming in and doing all these tracks?
There's a lot of dog handlers on the property from all different departments.
I mean, does Manitowoc County really want? Does Manitowoc and Calumet? I get the sense they don't really want them there.
Well,
the Manitowoc called them in. They're the one instructing them where to go.
they had very limited use of them at trial.
Wow.
They did do their investigative leads on it, though.
Mhm.
I mean,
Yes.
when they searched the gender barrels after the dogs hit on them, so there
I
was
mean,
some kind of system.
Do you guys think that Sarah Foss showed up on the property and didn't bring her dog one day? I doubt it. She's there on the 9th, but there's no dog reports whatsoever. There's a 32-page report. We received 30 pages of it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, that one is a bit. Yeah, I know that was kind of a narrative, a summary report. That one we got. It's possible. I'm not saying it's true, but it's possible that the more written out versions of it are part of the.
I mean, they sent the dogs to the Twin Bridge Road area.
Yeah.
They had to have sent them to the other reports of people calling in and saying, did they send them to Tuma Lake? We don't know.
Yeah.
Be interesting to find out what's in that other 30 pages.
Well, one of them is what they found on the 7th, right? Because they're only from the 6th.
Yep. And there's no photos for the 7th or 8th.
No.
Well, besides the Wisconsin State Patrol, but none of the officers' photos that were taken.
Yep. Yeah. Nor the 9th, though, by the way.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, in answer to T1's question, do we trust the credibility of the reports of the tracking? I would say probably yes, because what would the dog handlers and the dogs, they're not in on the idea that we're trying to frame Steve, are we?
Well,
and the dog handlers, I don't get that they would be in on it, other than the fact that they're being told to go somewhere else and to not come in and not do this and not do that and go there. And
like Brutus. Let's take for Brutus, for instance. They take him and tell him to start at the crusher. They state that the officers were following the dog, but the handlers say that the officers were pointing them to go in the next direction. They pointed them towards her car. When they went to the crusher, there's no signs of anything. Then they go from her car over to his trailer.
anyway, sorry.
And why don't they call in all these scent dogs on the 5th? She's still just a missing person. No, they're looking for a body.
Yeah.
That's why they called in the cadaver unit.
Okay.
Well, sorry, Miguel. Sorry for that interruption. I'm obviously
No, that was great.
It was nice to have Steve join us on the on the chat, albeit briefly. But yeah, if you can crack on, I'll give the screen over to you completely. Let's just do that.
Okay.
There we go. Yeah, it's all yours, pal.
Okay. So we're back on the PowerPoint. So I'll just start just trying to get us back on track. We're looking at track 5, which started halfway to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. The sent article was given to Loof, and she was given a fine command. She went immediately to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. Arriving at the Cuss Road cul-de-sac is what this slide shows in the red box. She immediately walks across the gravel road, which is the road toward the deer camp off the cul-de-sac. And then she goes into the woods. We start seeing what she's calling, she gives a direction here. I think she says southwest. So we can see that Loof walks toward this clearing where a house was. And before we get too much farther, I guess a lot of people may not have thought about it, but what is this area next to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac? Well, it's an area where people have come and they've cleared trees, but they haven't developed the area. So it's possible somebody was going to sell that area as a lot for a new home. One of the things that's very popular in Wisconsin is what we call naturally wooded lots, where people actually build the home but leave the natural woods around the home. It's basically a zero maintenance yard because of the woods. And it's very possible that this area where the burial site was an area where trees were being cleared. And you can see on this map that Officer Fauski had that they actually have a lot, a rectangular lot selected, suggesting this was maybe a parcel that was going to be sold for a new home.
Wasn't this one, sorry to ask, the owner of this property, was that the Van der Walle, that big residence you see there?
I'm not sure who owned the residence, but that residence was existing that night.
The same person that owns that property owns the adjacent where the burial site is located.
They own the property.
All the neighbors gave verbal consent for them to search. They didn't get a search warrant for it.
Yeah, I remember one of the DCI reports. One of the inhabitants of that building walks the dog
Van der Werf.
into the Van der Werf. He walks the dog into that forest, just like meters away or yards away from that burial site. So, and she didn't see anything. Was quite interesting.
Yeah, I don't know if we have a good photo of the burial site.
No.
And but if you look at, so she's on scent track. The first thing she does is walk through the woods until she gets to the edge of this neighbor's yard, and then she skirts the edge of the yard and quickly heads back into the woods. Starts searching through the woods, and then circles back, stays on the perimeter of the clearing, and then ends up at the burial site. So if we imagine that this is somebody coming with a bucket full of cremains, and they're looking for a place to bury it without being detected, and they park just off the Cuss Road burial site on the road to the deer camp. They don't want to be out in the open, so they quickly walk across the opening. They're tracking back deeper into the woods, and they realize they're in a yard, so they quickly get back in the woods. They're looking through the woods and probably decide it'd be very difficult to bury it here. And then they find something important on the perimeter of the clearing. And what I think it is a place where a tree was taken down, but the root ball pulled out so much dirt with it that it collapsed and left a big hole. And the people who were trying to develop the land just filled the hole with anything they had. They said a pallet and a bag of peat moss, and a bunch of dirt. And this is probably an area where it was easy to dig out because it already was a natural hole. And this would have been an easy place to bury cremains.
But you should have known that, huh? Not everybody knows that.
Okay, and I'll get more into this. But when we look at that as the scenario of what we think happened here, one problem we have is Kathleen Zellner is thinking that Loof would have only followed Teresa's trail and thinks Teresa's body was buried here. Mm-hmm. But I believe somebody associated, a contaminator of the scent article was here. Loof is following the scent of the scent article's contaminator. And when Loof gets to the place where the cremains are buried, this is where we get a strange write-up from Fauske. She's saying, Loof is giving me a signal like this smell is not very favorable. Like, what's not favorable to a dog? Let's start with. I've seen dogs smell a lot of things. But she's definitely saying the dog is trying to communicate with her, and she doesn't fully understand what the dog's saying. And I've recently found a course in the resume of Loof that Loof had been trained with human remains. Mm-hmm. And I think what Loof was actually telling her was, I found something, but it's not what we're looking for. Right. Okay. So this is the same area, and this is a very important part of the human remains detection dogs. I know a lot in this case they're called cadaver dogs, but during trial testimony, Julie Kramer made a big point of saying they were human remains detection dogs, and they had been trained on many types of human remains, including cremains. Yep. We know that her dog Brutus was a very experienced dog and did alert on the cremains in the Dassey burn barrel.
Wow.
And she also didn't like them being called cadaver dogs, so I'm going to try to not call them cadaver dogs. Okay. Question? Okay, so when Brutus is brought to the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, so we can see this area next to the cul-de-sac where clearing is being made, probably for a house, or maybe they're trying to sell the lot and they want it pre-cleared just so they would get more money for the lot. And one thing we know is this was probably fully wooded and that somebody's been in there tearing down trees. So upon arrival, Brutus checks the area and then gives a bark alert in an area of disturbed earth with a shovel lying on it. So remember, they're bringing the dogs in after they've already dug up the area and decided it wasn't pertinent to the case. And there's disturbed earth that was probably dug out of the burial site with a shovel lying on it. And Brutus alerts on it. Julie Kramer's husband's dog, Trace, also comes. And he shows interest but doesn't alert. He's less experienced, Trace is. Brutus is the more experienced dog. They actually take the shovel and knock it clean of dirt and move it somewhere else and bring the dogs back. And Brutus shows no interest in the shovel. He only shows interest in the excavated dirt. So what we have here is we have a human remains dog saying there are human remains in the excavated dirt after the police have said the burial site had absolutely nothing to do with the case, and after the Wisconsin Crime Lab truck and the DCI cars were sent home and told there's nothing to see here. Okay? Any questions?
Well, a little side note about that shovel. It was placed there by Manitowoc because you hear Officer Bushman requesting a shovel and crime tape.
When he calls for Lincoln Colburn from Stevens' house?
In the morning.
Oh, in the morning? Okay. Yeah, Bushman is the one that's sort of keeping people at bay in the cul-de-sac. Is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's the retired Manitowoc policeman.
Yep. A reserve deputy that was brought in for approximately 9 hours.
And he had some involvement in the earlier case, right?
100%.
Yep.
He was one of the officers that arrested Stephen Avery.
Yeah. So he's just standing around in the cul-de-sac. Okay, so I came around something. So we have a forensics expert that was brought in by Kathleen Zellner's team, and his name was Dr. Dahan.
Yep.
And I have a short excerpt here. This is, I guess, observation number 20 in his affidavit. And one of the things he's doing is he's going over the bone fragment photos that we have not been given, where Dr. Eisenbrown, or Berg, sorry, I keep calling it Brown, has photographed each bone one by one. And he remarks that they appear to be coated with a yellow or tan soil or dust.
Right.
What's interesting is we know here in the Cuss Road burial site, we're in a clearing where trees have been cleared. So I don't know if everybody's familiar with how a large number of trees get cleared, but usually they're cut down, and then there's a second effort to remove the stumps.
Right.
And sometimes they bring in excavators, and you can see an excavator here with a special tool on it, pulling up a stump, and it pulls up a whole root system, and it leaves a pretty big hole in the ground. And sometimes they use a thing called a grinder. So I'm showing a stump being taken out by a grinder in the upper right corner. And when you take it out with a grinder, even if you just use a chainsaw to bring limbs off of it, you generate all sorts of sawdust. And typically what you end up with, because you take the roots out, is a hole, and you don't have enough material to fill the hole back in. And one of the things you do is you tend to put the sawdust into the hole, among other things, just to get the ground level again.
Right.
So what I think is happening here is the hole we found that had parts of a pallet in it and a bag of peat moss and dirt, and also had sawdust in it, I think. And I think the sawdust is what's clinging to these bones, because they were buried for a time in the Cuss Road burial site, which was a location where a stump had been removed. Okay?
Right. Okay.
Okay, so here we have it at 4:51. 4:51 is between sundown and the end of civil twilight. At 4:51, they're abandoning the site, but two men continued to work at that site and were photographed by aerial photographs. I'm not showing the whole set here, but this is a close-up of the area of the tarp near the burial site. And I've put some call-outs on it, though it's very hard to make out what these are. But it looks to me like two men standing next to a tarp and some outdoor lighting. And this was happening at the Cuss Road burial site after everybody was dismissed and sent to go home. It supposedly was no longer a crime scene. It wasn't pertinent to the case. And this property is still under police custody, and there's two people standing out there at night, and who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay, we could have covered that a lot more. I know. Jarvis has a lot more material on that evening. We've been pouring over that photograph. But we're going to skip forward because we're talking about the dog tracks, and we're going to go
Okay.
to track number 6. Do you have something to show, Jerez?
No. This is just we shared that picture back then, trying to get answers of what's in that picture, but it still is very speculative. Zooming in like that.
I think it's
And then-
blurred. The color detail is not bad, but it's so blurred
Yeah.
that it's very hard to.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can. Well, the reason why I think it was two hats back then to people was like, you have two of these lights from different sides, and when you wear clothing, your hat kind of lights up. That's basically in a lot of pictures, especially when you have no more bolder people. So couldn't really make out what it was else. So yeah.
Yeah, so we see. I think the one guy looks like he's wearing a red, maybe flannel shirt with a blue vest coat over it. The thing that could be their heads with maybe ski hats could also be some other style of hat.
Right.
But if you see pictures, there are a lot of pictures in odd collections. If you see anybody dressed that might match these color schemes, so it's like a red shirt, maybe with the sleeves rolled up. It looks like to me he's wearing probably a down vest over it, and probably blue jeans. And the second man, there's very little you can make out except he has maybe an orange hat.
Okay. Yeah.
If we could identify these men, it could be valuable. Okay, so we're going to go on to track 6. So just real quick, let's just recap.
Sure.
Track 5, tracks 3, 4, and 5 were run that day before those pictures at night. We had all this activity going on the Cuss Road cul-de-sac. We did do a scent trail around the Redonta deer camp, but it looked like somebody maybe just circling around trying to get a view of something, and then going back out. And when we see track 6, we're going to see something very different. So Officer Fauski comes back the next day, the 8th, and she's here earlier than this, but it takes her a while to get back out and be allowed to work. And at 8:56, she's all ready to try to rerun track 3. So you can see in her report, she envisioned this as being a rerun of track 3 without being interrupted. And she started at the location of the last known location of the RAV4, again, near Stevens' trailer. Now, what's interesting here is K9 Loof works around the van as she did the first time, but now she goes immediately to the service door and the overhead door of the garage. She doesn't go to Stevens' truck at all this time. So maybe her effort to go to Stevens' truck the first time wasn't all that important, since on her second run of the track, she doesn't even go there. She immediately tries to go back toward where the German Shepherd is at the burn pit. Again, Officer Fauski pulls her off of her trail and redirects her, which is a warning that she may not understand what she's being commanded to do. She goes to the south door, which is where she gets pulled to, just like she did on track 3, and she starts searching the perimeter of the house when she's not allowed to enter. When she gets to the north end of the trailer, she just starts searching the perimeter of the house on the backside until Fauski pulls her off of the perimeter of the house because she's headed back toward where Bear is on Millbilly's back screen there. And she pulls him back toward the trail they found the other day. So I really don't think there's a whole lot to see here other than it's another example where I think Loof is confused because Fausti's pulling her off trail. And why they didn't just get the animal control to come in and remove Bear, I have no idea. They have 2 county police departments, and I will say Jeff Young was dumbfounded by the fact that they didn't get the dog removed the first day.
Well, the morning of the 9th, one of the officers requests the constable, and then later on that afternoon, they call Dr. Kotz to come get Bear from Troopers Humane Society, Animal Hospital. So
they basically have the scent dogs cower and avoid him, and for 2 full days before they think of doing that.
After the bones were found, yeah.
Yeah. So what Jeff Young said is when he brings his dog, he would have them do that immediately. If his dog hadn't completed the trail, they would wait until the dog was removed. And was really a little dumbfounded by what Handler Fausti did. So also, I'm showing a blow up here of what this trail looks like just at the beginning. Again, walks from the position to the van, smells around the van. The one thing that might tend to inculpate Stephen is that the dog does follow a trail to the garage, but the garage was searched thoroughly, and so was the house. So trying to say these dog trails prove something when they were searched thoroughly and nothing was really found is not all that inculpatory. Sorry. Gotta get that right. Okay, so what happens is Loof doesn't go find a scent trail now to the burial site. And that's a little curious. So Loof is walking on the west, to the west on the quarry side of the field this time. It's a little bit different than where she walked before. She encounters a CD that they pick up. And then about midway to the quarry, she looks to the south with interest. This is an interesting remark because this is showing that she's catching the scent of something in the air to the south of where she is on the trail. And it's a strong thing if it's traveling that far. And Loof is interested in it. This did not happen the previous time they ran the trail. They actually were on this part of the trail twice before. Canine Loof enters the cul-de-sac, and instead of reproducing what she did on track 5, now she stays and starts working immediately towards the Redont deer camp. So there's a fresher trail going to the deer camp. And we also know Loof is picking up some air scent. What happens when she gets to the deer camp is similar to what happened the time before on track 4 when she circles the deer camp. But she comes on something that Officer Fausti called a cat leader pail. We're assuming leader meant litter.
Mm-hmm.
And pale didn't mean like pale ale, but pale, P-A-I-L. And there were photographs taken a couple days later from the yard, and we think this 4-gallon bucket is what Officer Fausti is referring to. Now, what's interesting about this 4-gallon bucket that's interesting, Loof, is it has a bunch of gray dust on it. And I think that's why Officer Fausti thought it was a cat litter pail, because the gray dust looks like cat litter. One of the things similar about cat litter dust and cremains dust is they've both become dehydrated, and they're oxides that will bind with water very, very. They absorb a lot of water if they're contacted by water. So it's very possible that the dust left in the pail is residue cremains. And I think this is the bucket that the cremains were carried to the burn pit in.
Wow.
If we look at the actual box of the cremains, it's much smaller than 4 gallons. So all they'd have to do is carry this one bucket down there, dump it on the burn pit, and then skedaddle out of there, get the bucket out of their hands because it's somewhat suspicious to be carrying this bucket.
Well, that bucket photo was taken on the 10th.
Yes. And it was discarded on the perimeter of the Redont deer camp.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Okay, so if we follow the track, so what she's saying is this bucket is right about the point where Loof leaves the ring that Loof sort of had searched before and jumps off the island that's the deer camp and crosses the quarry pit. She makes a point of saying he indicated on a body of water twice. So you can see there's these 2 small X's.
Yep.
And Loof actually thinks something's in the water at those 2 points, a very strong odor. So there's a good chance something got dropped there. Actually, I think there's a good chance something got dropped the whole length of this trail. And then what happens is Loof gets to the berm between the quarry pit property and the Avery property. And Loof finds herself in what they call a pool of scent. So whoever was putting the scent down stayed here a while and also maneuvered around in this area. The pacing back and forth is not necessarily indicative of what the person did. And Loof is trained to look for an exit from the pool with the strongest scent. And eventually, after working the pool of scent, Loof decides to go to the corner of Avery's property and go straight to the burn pit where Bear is. Also, Kowski makes the remark that in her experience, the way Loof is acting, she's within 25 yards of the location of the scent source. And that's probably about how far she was from the burn pit.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? Because on that same berm, just a little bit south of that, we're talking about 25 yards,
Yes.
Going on there. There was a necklace found over there, just on a big, small hill upwards. And then, the berm was all the way up north. There was a necklace found. And I always wondered why do the investigators check out glasses they found with the hull box, but not a necklace? They didn't want anything to do with adjacent properties to be,
We do have photos of that necklace, right?
Yeah, we do, yeah.
They were in that batch of evidence photos we got.
Yeah, but they were just put in evidence, and the Hawkins guy just tossed it in the evidence, never to be found again. So that kind of thought that was weird.
Yeah, we might not ever see more than the photos. So now I want to examine in more depth what's going on here in the vicinity of the burn pit. So this picture is an officer guarding Stevens' burn barrel, which is the one that had the electronics in it. And this is happening actually on the 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And we can see this picture is actually shot almost from the corner of Stevens' lot, right where that arrow would originate to go after the burn pit. And we can see that this policeman has a clear view of anybody entering the lot there. And what I think is the person who planted the cremains was waiting for this officer to not be there before he made the mad dash to dump the bucket.
And wasn't it Wendy Baldwin who was supposed to guard that barrel?
It might be Wendy. I I do have
Doesn't
some
look
other
like it.
pictures. I simplified it for this presentation. There are some pictures where you might be able to ID the police.
Oh, yeah.
There's actually two policemen for a while. One is just standing at the car, jawing with the other one, and one's standing with the barrel.
All right.
So I used the forensic recreation to try to give you a feeling for here. He's looking from the location of the burn barrel back. He can see that corner of the lot, and you have to cross his field of vision to get to the burn pit. So what I think they're doing is waiting for an opportunity to plant, and they can't hang out too close to the corner of the lot. There's a fence directly outside that corner. That's that gray line. So they have to enter the lot back where those vehicles and boats are parked. And if they stand there, they're worried they'll be seen. So they're walking. They're probably camped out a little bit further away from the scene, and they're just occasionally coming to that point to see if the policeman is away. And that's now the secondary trail away from here was when Officer Fauski led Loof away. So the primary trail is toward Bear, and she didn't want to let him go there because the other dog might injure her dog. Okay?
Magilla, can I ask a question? In terms of who might be probable suspects for carrying the pails, what do we know about those people in terms of their permission to be on the site at this time? Are they part of being signed into the normal people who have access to the site?
Well, you with any like time and attendance system, you tend to see this too. There are a lot of gaps and mistakes in the log about who's signed in, but I will say that the people doing this, if they are not law enforcement, if they are caught in any way, if they're seen, they will be arrested and they will be suspected of murder. If they're law enforcement and they're not caught, if they're just caught on the property and they have a right to be on the property, very likely they can talk their way out of the situation. If they're not law enforcement, this would take extreme courage. And it also would probably be a fool's errand.
So would it be possible that there are non-law enforcement people who've been given permission to be on the property?
Well, we were told, other than the dog crews, there was no one. The explanation for being on the property that Ryan gave and Scott was that they just went to the command center on the property, and that they never actually went on to the Avery property unescorted.
They were there twice the same day.
Yeah.
It's possible, but I will tell you that there's also a problem of motive here. If you could dump the cremains, say, if you just left them somewhere like the Cuss Road cul-de-sac, and you were Ryan Hilligus, you have no motive to move it closer to Stephen's house. All you're trying to do is make sure you're not a suspect. The only one with a motive to move it closer, I think, is really the police who failed to identify the cremains when they dug the hole up in the first place, and also to try to make it easier to convict who you think the real killer is.
Well, I find it very troubling that Mark Wiegert mentions bones one time in the November 9th interview, and then every time he talks about Teresa, he references they found a body, and the dogs took him to where the body was found.
Well, that's beyond the scope of today's investigation, but
I know.
Okay, but what we're saying.
Yep.
Okay, so This is just giving you a detail that he was working toward the garage area and they stopped due to the German Shepherd. I just want to make a point again that all these drawings that are on gray maps with the black Sharpie were done by Officer Fauski, contemporaneous to her dog doing work on this property. This is not a defense exhibit I put together, and I think that is dumbfounding that this was not presented to the jury. I think this slice of this slide showing somebody planting something in the Stephen Avery burn pit with explanations and cross-examination, the longer you could have had this picture in front of the jury, this was a much stronger argument than anything I saw the defense put up.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would just like to sort of ask a question of everybody other than Magilla. I mean, the question is, if Dean and Jerry had a gorilla, how would this case have turned out?
Well, I think everybody really needs a gorilla.
Yes.
Well,
I think if they had somebody looking into these tracks, as you pointed out, Magilla, I mean, it's just mind blowing that. Do we have a reason why Dean and Jerry overlooked all these tracks? Were they not given this information, or was it just something that they didn't think was important?
I think they just got overloaded with abundance of evidence and reports and all that, and they just were too short on time. I mean, look at it now. There's a whole army of people investigating stuff, and we're still short on straws. Imagine them.
Yes,
I mean,
absolutely. Yep. Billy?
But
if they'd have had a gorilla,
there's numerous things that the jury didn't see, and Stephen had no chance. Cards were all against him. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Dean and Jerry did see or didn't see.
that's another question. Yeah.
Mark. I mean, I think it's very easy to criticise two people once they've lost a case.
I believe if they would have had an expert analyze the audio from Calumet and Manitowoc, they would have had way more things to go after. Just the simple call in the ninth.
I suppose
one of the things I always rabbit on about is that notwithstanding that more work could have possibly been done by Dean and Jerry, and things that they didn't do that they possibly could have done, they did end up with a 7 not guilty people on the initial count after the trial was over. So exactly. I think that's a pretty good result, and how you turn 7 not guilties and 2 undecideds into 12 guilties tells you where the problem lay. It didn't lay simply with the evidence, even though you could have more compelling evidence as well. The problem lay in the corruption of the jury. Because they're supposed to judge the evidence on what they saw in court. So how do you go from 7 not guilties to all being guilty? Is beyond reason.
Exactly.
So
and the bottom line. Sorry, Jules. Yep.
Even Kathleen Zellner didn't have all the files. She just found out about the bones later. So imagine, do we have to think like Dean and Jerry had all the files? I don't think so.
No.
I mean, I know Jerry is questioning about it, if he had it all.
I mean, for me, the big problem is, as you say, when it comes to the jury decision, and it was 7 to. Was it 7 to 5? 7 to 3, 7 3, two not such, not sure. I mean, how on earth do you convict somebody of the crime and not find them guilty of mutilating the corpse? If Steve did the crime, he mutilated the corpse. That is
Well,
plain and simple.
Kratz basically threatened him in his closing statements.
Yeah,
And so
If
did
you
the
find this man not guilty, you're saying your officers did this.
yeah,
You have to go back in the community.
yeah,
yeah, and that was repeated in the jury room by the foreman of the jury,
yeah,
who was, dead set not going to find Stephen Avery not guilty. So that basically the jurors, particularly the less stronger ones, were threatened, intimidated probably. Plus, you also had people like Jerry Pargle being present in the jury room on the first night in the restaurant on the first night of deliberation.
Yeah.
very problematic. Yeah, very problematic. Yeah.
So not to take anything away from the importance of as much evidence as you can, but you're working against a degree of corruption that Stephen could have Stephen could have said the worst thing or done the worst thing, or you could have had someone come out and say they committed the crime, and I think the jury was still going to find Stephen guilty. So
yeah. Yep. Magilla. Unfortunately, Steve didn't have your expertise at the time.
Well, I'm trying to give it to him now.
Yeah, and
fascinating stuff.
It was great to have Steve join us for a few minutes. Thanks, Mark, for sharing that with us.
No problem.
Magilla, can we have another dose of fun with bananas next week?
Absolutely. We're just getting started with these things.
Excellent.
Right.
And
this was a big piece, though.
Yes. Yeah.
Very much so.
Fascinating stuff. Listen, gentlemen, it's been absolutely fascinating having Magilla explain his findings. And I know, Millbilly, that you've done a lot of research into this as well. And I appreciate. Thank you very much for asking to come on and join us this evening, because it's been absolutely brilliant having you on as well. I would like to thank Teresa, obviously, for taking the time out over there in Holland, and hopefully Utrecht are doing well. Have I got it right? Utrecht.
Utrecht.
As for the Aussie, I don't know that the Sharks are going to appreciate those bananas. I just don't know about that. I think they've got other things. Yeah.
Well, these are here to keep Magilla going for next week, so we go tease him to come back.
Okay. Well, anyway, it's been great having you all on board, and hopefully we'll see you all again next week. And thank you very much obviously to everybody that's commented in the chat. It's absolutely brilliant having you all on board, and I would like to say cheerio and thanks very much for tuning in. And it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from me.
And me.
Good for me.
Cheerio, mates.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.